So, in a surprise turn of events, the Winter 2021 update for Age of Empires 4 is coming next week, which is really cool, but it is actually autumn next week, so I think the guys at Relic Entertainment need to have a look at a calendar. Nonetheless though, this is really cool and it's really welcome because there's already some grumblings amongst the community about balance issues, and personally, I think a lot of those things come down to it still being a relatively new game and the big brain pros haven't yet figured out all the best metas and the best build orders. So some civs that seem a bit weak are actually a lot stronger than people initially thought. Delhi Sultanate being a prime example of that. Without any sort of changes or bug fixes, Delhi Sultanate have gone from being widely considered one of the weakest civs to now being played quite effectively at really high rank ladder matches.
Delhi, victory #1 in the Genesis $20,000 Age of Empires 4 tournament.
And it's just because people have now figured out how they work. So I think that's going to be the case in some places, but nonetheless, goes without saying that there are definitely some civilizations and some units specifically that are a lot stronger than other things that other civs have available to them. So first on the list, French Hulk ship tweaked to no longer rule the high seas. Now, the Hulk itself is without a doubt the most powerful naval ship in the game, at least when fighting other ships. And the French get it in the Second Age, whereas every other civilization that can get it can only get it in the Castle Age, which means that French basically dominate any hybrid or pure water map. So Archipelago, Warring Islands, Boulder Bay, French is really dominant. There is some counterplay on Boulder Bay, but on the pure water maps like Archipelago and Warring Islands, being able to have access to that Hulk in the Second Age is incredibly strong and means that basically if you are playing as French and your opponent is not playing as French, at least at my level of play in the sort of 12 to 1300 ELO bracket, the French player is going to win, 99% of the time just because they get access to that really powerful ship. I would personally hope that they change Hulks as a whole, and they also moved the French Hulk to the Castle Age. I do find it a bit strange that the Karak with cannons is worse than the Hulk which has ballistas. That to me just doesn't make a lot of sense, so we're going to have to see what they do with that. So then moving on to the next one, and this kind of is in reference to the French, at least a lot of people will interpret it as this anyway, and this is the crossbowmen, spearmen and elite crossbowmen will pose a greater threat to cavalry. Now I'm assuming that also includes the arbaletiere or arbaletiere, the French unique crossbow. Now this, on the face of it, seems really good because a lot of people, particularly lower rank players, see the French Royal Knights as the absolute scourge of the early game, and despite them being quite straightforward to control and use effectively, they can be quite difficult to counter if you are not expecting them and if you don't know what to do to play around them. My issue with this is that rather than nerfing French Royal Knights, which arguably do need some tweaks, they've instead buffed crossbowmen, spearmen and elite crossbowmen across the board against cavalry. Now this is a bit of a twofold issue because one, it makes the already weak horsemen even weaker, depending on how they do this. And two, I personally, in my experience, don't feel that knights as a whole are a huge issue. They're a high investment cost, they require a lot of resources, so it'd be interesting to see how exactly they've done this, whether they've just added to the bonus damage that these units do to cavalry, if they do extra bonus damage to knights and to horsemen, or if it's just knights / lancers. So again, will be interesting to see how that one goes. On to the third one, significantly reducing the cost of the Chinese civilization's repeater crossbow. Now, that is a good thing for sure, because right now they're just quite expensive and it already has such a high investment cost by having to get the 2 landmarks in H2 to then already cost so much for each individual unit as well. It just hasn't really seen a lot of play because it is just so expensive to get to a point where you can be mass producing them, and by that point most people are already at the Castle Age. And then fourth, fixed a HRE prelate unit to allow them to continue inspiring after being pushed. This is really good. One of the major benefits that HRE has was that their prelate could buff villagers and make them more effective at gathering resources. And when that broke, that was one of the main benefits of HRE broken and no longer working, which meant that an already kind of weak civ was having one of their major benefits regularly bug out. And, you know, that was a big part of the reason why HRE are considered kind of, you know, very low tier. Which is unfortunate because they have some interesting gameplay styles with their play around relics, etc. and the power spikes that they can have in the mid game. Going on to the next point, Mongol superior ability adjusted to ensure the speed modifier is appropriately applied. Thanks to the community for calling this out. Now, I'm sure you guys have all seen it. I'm sure some of you will remember the town center cheese in the first few weeks of the game's release, where the Mongol town center would just zoom across the map at lightning speed, plonk itself down next to you. They've released a hotfix to stop it being able to unpack next to your town center, and now they've also set their eyes on fixing the movement speed issue, because they were, as I understand it, the fastest units in the game when this bug occurred, and obviously that's kind of ridiculous. So great that they're dealing with this. Fantastic that it's coming out sooner than expected. And then lastly, another quite major bug, and that is the Ruse civilization relic duplication bug. Now, for those of you who weren't aware, the Ruse could infinitely duplicate relics, which meant that they could effectively get unlimited resources, because if you teched into tithe in your monastery, that would mean that any relics housed in your monasteries gave you gold, food, wood, and stone. So this is fantastic, and I think with these changes, we're probably going to see, depending on the tweak to crossbowmen, spearmen, and elite crossbowmen, I would imagine that cavalry across the board is going to be a bit less powerful, maybe a lot less powerful. It depends how far they go. And I actually think this will open up some space for the more infantry-focused civs. I think England is probably going to be one of the big winners in this patch, because if the spearmen are more effective at protecting the longbowmen, that means that you can get more value out of the already strong longbowmen. I do think we're going to see more English players. We're going to see more Delhi controlling the sacred sites early on, because their spearmen will be more effective against horsemen and knights trying to rush around and counter their sacred sites. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this goes and how strong these changes are made, but until we see actual numbers, it's kind of impossible to say. So roll on next week, and let's see what they do with it. And if you found any of this video useful, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm starting to make more Age of Empires content, and I'm also starting to cast both noob and pro games, and I will be uploading those to my YouTube channel. So if you want to see some analysis of both bad players and good players, be sure to stick around, because I'll be uploading some videos of that soon. I've been All Fun and James Zero, and thank you so much for watching.